Welcome to the latest episode of The Special Sauce. I'm your host, Chris Perdikis, but today I'm not joined by Lee Jones. He's got a serious case of the man flu and has stayed at home. But on today's episode, we welcome Sam Ryan from Michael Page. Sam is the Regional Director of Michael Page for Melbourne and Canberra and is responsible for a headcount of over 50 people and a budget in the tens of millions, all while still being hands-on and billing big numbers himself. Today, we will discuss how Sam found the right market for himself, along with how he leads a big business but he's still in the trenches with his team. We'll go deep to understand the value that Sam places on client relationships and how he actually goes about to build them and consistently add value to his clients, and some great tips on how to stand out and have impact in meetings. Sam, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
That's all right, mate. How's things?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Excellent.
Really good.
Excellent. Well, look, let's get straight into it because I'm really excited about this episode. We've got so much to cover. Now, to start off with, I'd love to start in the early days for our viewers and listeners, rather. You've been with Page for about 15 years now, with a stint in the UK as well. Tell us about the early days. Yeah, you mentioned to me off air, your start to recruitment was a bit of a fight.
Yeah, it was a bit of a scrap
to
begin with, Chris. I think the early days, I was probably a bit like a roller coaster, pretty up and down. Probably struggled to deliver some of the results that I probably wanted to and the business probably wanted me to do. So it was a bit of a fight to begin with. I started in Melbourne, recruiting across marketing. One of the reasons that I joined Page was I was always attracted to the opportunity to live abroad. And so after about 18 months, I saw the opportunity to then move to the UK and join our finance team over there, which again was a tough introduction into landing in the UK market. There's a lot of very, very talented finance recruiters out there that were wiping the floor with me, to say that.
Yeah. I imagine just from what I know from the UK market compared to the Australian one, it's very different, right? It's a lot more, I guess, ruthless for want of a better word, or it's just it's a lot more tougher. And the market's obviously a lot more saturated with more recruiters, right?
Totally. So, I came from an office in Melbourne of probably 80 people, and our office over there in Victoria House had 500.
Oh, wow.
And there was 150 people just recruiting finance. So the size and scale of the market there is enormous. I think we had 10,000 competitors recruiting finance in central London. And many of them were 15, 20-year veterans. So as a 24-year-old, they were eating me for breakfast.
Yeah. And look, I think that's a challenge for a lot of recruiters, right? When they first start, right? It's how do they stand out? How do they get a foot in their market, whatever it may be? How did you go about that? How did you find, I guess, whether it was your niche or your specialty, whatever it was, but how did you get a foothold in that market?
Yeah. I think to begin with, it was probably learning what I wasn't good at, if I'm really honest with you. I spent the first 18 months recruiting in not-for-profit and public sector within central London. And I realised that I probably just didn't gel with, I had empathy for those organisations and what they did, but I didn't embrace the way that they went about hiring the best talent into their business. It was often quite slow, very budget conscious, a lot of red tape. And my ethos was get the best talent in. But for those reasons I just mentioned, they often didn't. And I probably struggled to gel with them or the people in those sectors. And an opportunity came up, and it was probably one of the last opportunities I think the business was going to give me to move into our commerce business. I think I had 6 months left on my visa, and I think the company was thinking, are we going to sponsor him? Are we going to keep him in the UK, or do we send him home? So at the time, it was a big investment. And I think going into commerce, I really, really enjoyed learning about how those businesses worked, how they operated, how they were growing or scaling those companies. And my niche over there at the time was a location. So it was EC1, which is East Central 1 for London. And really, I'd walk around those few city blocks that I had. It was pretty old school.
Yeah. So was that tight in terms of just actual streets, in terms of how, and sorry to interrupt, just in terms of how, I guess your patch call it, how narrow it was?
It's exactly. And I think that just goes to the size and scale of how big the London finance market is, that you can have a desk that is literally 8 city blocks. And so Yeah, it was a pretty old school way of going about it. Walking into buildings, knowing what companies are in there, taking a picture on your phone, which was a pretty dodgy BlackBerry at the time.
We all used to do that.
And then head back to the office and put them up onto your CRM and start to systematically work through who they were. But I just enjoyed those conversations with business leaders around how they were growing a profitable business.
Yep. Yeah, and you mentioned off air, I think when we were preparing for this, that was a market that you found and obviously you resonated with. What advice do you have for people in similar sort of situations, right? Because I guess from a Rec2Rec perspective, I see it all the time. I see, people maybe in the first 2 or 3 years in recruitment, they're on, desk XYZ. Maybe they're not loving it, maybe they're not passionate about it, but they love, recruitment. What's the sort of advice in terms of how to, continue to stay in recruitment, find their niche?
I think firstly, you've got to run your own race, and it's very easy to get down on yourself by looking at all the other top performers and thinking they're on a better desk or they're making money faster than me. I think you need to be prepared to just run your own race initially and be learning about yourself, learning about what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying, understanding maybe why that is. And then be, I suppose, brave enough or courageous enough to be having some of those conversations internally about, I'm really enjoying this part of my clientele, but not this. Are there options for me to move laterally into a different market and find what you're passionate about, find what's, what you're really interested in, and then things become easy. If you're passionate about advanced manufacturing, you're going to listen to podcasts and you're going to really, understand what's going on in that sector, all of a sudden you're going to enjoy your job a lot more.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's, speaking from my own experience as well, like I was predominantly go-to-market sales recruiter before going into Rec2Rec and ran a couple of desks. But I landed onto, I think it's a similar desk that you're doing now, that industrial manufacturing B2B space. And it's just, for me, resonated with the people, just connected. It was simple as that. I just felt, comfortable basically in terms of talking with those decision makers, talking with those industries. And naturally, that leads to, listen to more podcasts about what's going on in that sector or doing research and actually enjoying it as opposed to just treating it like, it's a job, right? And saying, I have to do this because, I need to put a deal on the board for October, right? What about these days? Tell us about the desk that you're running.
So my desk today is senior sales leadership roles or commercial leadership roles, focused on the industrial and manufacturing sector within Victoria. Yeah,
nice. One thing I really want to focus on is your time management, because I don't know how you do it, right? You've got obviously about 50, 55 headcount that you're I guess responsible for, budgeted tens of millions of dollars, billing yourself big numbers, young family at home. Like where do you find the time to even do all this?
I think I've got a very good support network around me in the office, but also at home. Yep. So I think sometimes it's having those really good people around you that give you back some time. So I'm very grateful that, my direct reports in Page have been with that business for a long time and they're exceptional at their jobs. My wife is also in Page Group, so she understands the cut and thrust of it at times. So there's some understanding at home as well, which is always helpful.
Yep.
But I'm a big person of routine, Chris. I have the same routine every week. I start my week by looking at my schedule. I block out time for my own market. I have my one-to-ones set at the same time every week. I eat lunch at the exact same place. I go to the same place in the building. I get the same thing. I'm a big person of routine and structure, which I think gives me back that time to be able to balance a lot of priorities.
100%. And no, I agree. I think, just on this podcast alone, most people we've spoken to, have a very similar background in terms of its routine. It's structure, it's routine, whether it's a morning routine, night routine, whatever it may be during the day, but their week is planned and they know where they're meant to be at every moment of the week. So they're not getting, there's always going to be things that you get called into or situations that pop up in recruitment, but for the core of it, they know exactly what they need to be doing at that particular time. And I think, definitely helps that your wife works with Paige as well, right? Did you meet her in London?
We did. We were a bit of an office romance.
Yeah.
I think I probably chased Lucy for probably 9 months.
Yeah.
And wore her down like a good
That's what you
recruiter
gotta
does.
do, right? That's what you got to do. You got to make the calls. You got to do the
Consistent,
visits.
you know.
And finally, they come around, and now it's
It was a follow up and follow up and follow up.
I get it. My wife's in recruitment as well. So Alicia, my wife, she was an agency, now she's internal, so she gets the stress as well of recruiters. So it's good to it's good something to bounce back off at home, right? And and have that someone that gets what we do and gets the I think just the nuances, right? The good, bad, and ugly that come with dealing with people.
Yeah,
which is our job. And you might have lost a deal and you're sort of upset and you're like, well, can you believe this excuse this candidate gave? I had a better one. I had this one today. So it's that common ground, I think, that
it's really
helps
nice.
level you.
Yeah, look, Lucy's. I'm very grateful for her because she's very good at giving me feedback.
Yeah,
she's not afraid to tell me when to pull my head in or when I've completely misread a situation. So that's it's one of the good things about having a partner that understands the industry is that she's very quick to just bring me back down to earth, which we all need sometimes.
100%. Mate, you mentioned off air when we were preparing for this, and something that stood out for me. You said, I want to be the captain, not the coach. Talk to us. What does that mean, specifically for you, and how's that sort of driven you in your career?
So the captain and not the coach, the mindset behind that is to be in the arena. And if you think about it in a sporting sense, the captain crosses the white line when they go play football or cricket or whatever the sport might be. They're in the trenches with the team, they're shoulder to shoulder, they're going up against the opposition. And that's the type of leader that I really aspire to be, is from a recruitment sense in the traffic with our team, going up against our competition, winning and losing, and still being really hands-on to understand what our customers are looking for, rather than being a leader that is just watching from the grandstands or spending too much time in internal meetings or boardrooms. I really like to have my finger on the pulse.
Yeah. And how's that sort of impacted, with how your internal reports, right? And I guess that what I'm trying to say is that that level of understanding, because I've said all the time, I've worked for a big business before where, a lot of the leaders in your position, they're not expected to bill. They're not even expected to go out to client meetings, right? And they're, managing the business and more from an internal focus. How has that sort of helped you internally in terms of your role with the people that, I guess, both direct and indirectly report to you?
I think it really helps that I can be out in the market and win work for some of my direct reports and offer real-time feedback when you've just been in a client meeting with them. You can offer advice and some coaching points. And that's the real fun part of the job, Chris. That's where I get my energy and that's where I get my passion for the job, is being customer facing with our consultants, not necessarily doing a theory-based training session in a boardroom. And I feel like that allows the development of our people to be accelerated. And my directors that report through to me, they're also in market. They're also still have a niche and doing really well in that as well. So we all kind of keep pushing each other. We're all very competitive. Our leaders all have a leaderboard that they're looking at.
Yeah.
And I think that creates the right atmosphere and the right environment that if you're a new starter coming in, you see the directors of Victoria are still out winning work and delivering for those customers. And that's what you look up to as role models, which I think is great.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the buy-in, right? From consultants level where, you're not asking them to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself, right? You're asking them to, especially the ones that are, newer to the industry in the first sort of few years, they're making the calls, they're doing the marketing, they're, out there, I guess, pounding the pavement, getting in front of clients, right? The hard stuff because they haven't got that network yet. But you're doing the exact same thing, different levels. But I think they could see, the hard work they put in now, what it's going to lead to in 10 years down the track.
Yeah, I think so. And some of the time it's sharing what didn't go well.
100%.
And I'm still making mistakes. I'm still learning as a leader and as a recruiter. And I think just being authentic enough and open enough to share that with your people, and for them to actually see, okay, here's Sam. He's been doing it for 16 years, but he's still learning. He's still on that pathway of development. It's not a set and forget, journey. So which I think that also helps to create the environment that it's okay to make mistakes. And one of the things I try to do, I recently shared with my team that a process that should have been completed in 5 weeks took me 6 months.
Yeah, wow.
And I pulled out every last little bit of hair that I had. But I really wanted to share that with the team because they're going through those experiences as well. And it's understanding, right, what can I do to get back on track? How can I improve that? So, I think, again, it's just being vulnerable with the team and leading by example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that vulnerability and authenticity, right, it relates back to them because I think you said earlier on, right, when you first started, how hard it was.
Yeah.
Right? The challenges that you had at consultant level when you just don't have that, I guess, commercial experience or even that life experience at times to get through it, right? And we see so many recruiters who, they may have had a shit quarter or a shit 6 months, and then they say, you know what, it's too hard. And they're just literally moments away from things clicking. And maybe, they need, obviously they need a bit of training or a bit of change, but to see that leader say, hey, you know what, I should have done this in a month, but it took me 6. Guys, this is where I went wrong. This is what I should have done better. I think that speaks volumes to, one, the culture of the business, but also just the buy-in that you're getting from your team from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing some of those. It's a tough market at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon that people are having challenges. And I think to remind people that that's okay. And it probably took me the best part of 3.5, 4 years to become a reasonably good recruiter. And I'm still working on that today. So it's not, I'm not perfect.
No, that's right. In your time, you've seen and you've hired and trained many recruiters. When you think of the best ones, what makes them stand out? What traits do they have?
I think there's some mindset traits initially that come to mind. I think they want to be winners. I think they have a huge amount of resilience. I think they're always driven to do more for their customer. So I think a lot of it is, certainly a mindset and how they approach their job. Some of the practical things are they've got really good systems in place. They do the same thing week in, week out, and that could be as simple as the first action that they do every morning is to review the latest CVs that have gone on to Seek or the latest candidates that have said, I'm now open to work. So they capture all of that in the first thing that they do at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, and they reach out to those people. It might be that they really understand how to add value to a particular customer and can go really deep with that niche that they're in, and they can provide really good talent within that sector. But the thing that stands out is a balance of mindset and then systems in place around how they, what they do with their candidates, what they do with their clients, and the activity is very, very consistent around that.
Yep. Is there any particular sort of, I guess it's just in your time, and then maybe it's just a Michael Page thing, any particular, I guess, what are activities that sort of drive success that you say, hey, it's a clear correlation, you do X, it's going to lead to Y very, very quickly? And, who are the best recruiters that are, I guess, how are they doing or what is it that they're doing?
I think one of the things, Chris, is that they've got a niche as a market. They really understand who their customers are within that niche and how to add value to them. That's probably one of the first things is that really opens the door for them to understand how they can add value to the client. They really meet a lot of people. There's no getting away from this job. We want to be providing the top 1-2% of talent to our customers, and to do that, you've got to be meeting lots and lots of people every week, and that can be clients and candidates. So they're very, very outward facing. They're in the traffic talking to their customers, and they use those opportunities and those conversations to learn and to be curious and then do something with that commercial information that they gather.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's so important, right? You've said it a couple of times, being in the traffic, and you just got, and I agree 100%. And I think, obviously the last sort of few years with obviously what's happened in the world and the work from home, it's a lot of people who've lost that, right? Where I don't think it's harder to get out, but a lot more people probably a bit more comfortable just doing it all from home or virtual. What are your thoughts on, I guess, the virtual versus the face-to-face and And I guess when it comes to building relationships?
I think relationships are based on trust, and I think that's hard to build or harder to build online. And I think where possible, we're always encouraging our people to get out and meet people face to face. And you get so much more out of that conversation, I think. If you get to walk around a manufacturing site to really understand how they make the product or the environment that they operate in. And I think clients really value that as well. Some of my customers are a good hour drive from the Melbourne CBD. And so when you're there and you are showing that you're really curious and you're really wanting to be able to understand their business and be able to partner with them, I think automatically they think, wow, this person's really made an effort.
Yeah.
Where they could have just jumped on a Teams call and spent 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But no, they've probably spent 2 hours just in travel time to get out there. So being in traffic is a big part of building relationships and trust.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, we ran similar desks and I know that client base, right? It's all out in the southeast or way out sort of west, right? It's 45 minutes to an hour to a client meeting, but the level of appreciation and trust you get back from those clients, you can't buy that, right? So I think it's, one thing for our listeners especially, the ones in the first couple of years, it's just, as you said, be in the traffic, get in front of people, candidates, clients, and get your name out there as often as you can, because I think that will reap rewards, maybe not immediately, but, in the following 6, 12, 18, 24 months, if you're doing it consistently, the work's going to flow, right? And that's actually a good segue just into one thing I wanted to discuss with you was client relationships, right? And client meetings. And one thing that stood out for me when we were preparing was the level of detail that you go into preparing for client meetings. Talk us through that. You've got a client meeting next week with a brand new business. What level of detail would you go into to prepare?
I think this is often where you can really, really win relationships and really differentiate yourself as a recruiter is in your prep. And one of the things that I'll do is look at the annual report if it's available, and I will really understand that the finance part of that report, what parts of their business are growing, what parts maybe they're having challenges with, what does the chairman's report say or chairperson's report say, really trying to get into the detail of that business. And then I'd often look at how does that compare with some of their competitors? Are their competitors performing better in some areas than others? So is it a Coles versus Woolies? Can you go in and compare the two? And I use that research and preparation to elevate the conversation really early on. I aim to know who else is in their business that we have in our network, who else we know mutually you can see that pretty quickly on LinkedIn these days. And really elevate the questions very early on in the conversation, from it being about just recruitment to how do we have a partnership? How do I help you build talent over a long term to help you achieve your business goals? Because that's what it's about. It's not about being transactional and just putting a person in to the job today. It's about, well, what are your business goals for the next 3 to 5 years? How deeply and intimately do I understand that? And how can I provide you talent that you can use then to help you achieve those goals?
Yeah, excellent. And I agree so much with that. I think it's the difference between that transactional and partnership mindset. Everyone loves a quick win and, you make a quick placement, but if you have that mindset, I don't think you'll last long-term in recruitment, right?
No,
you'll last for a few years, but your life's going to be pretty hard because every month, every quarter, you're starting again. You got to find clients, new clients. I know we always, focus on new business, but having that core group of, clients that use you, and you can say, you know what, my budget, I know I'm going to have it done because I've already spoken to these, call it 10 clients. I know how much hiring they're doing over the next 12 months.
Yep.
And I know they're going to use me, and I can factor that into my budget and say, well, now I need to go and find another, 150, 200 grand, whatever it is, to earn what I want to earn. But you've got that baseline there. And I think definitely that, something that stood out for me was the annual reports, right? And I imagine, on that you're getting the chairman's message and you understand better the long-term vision and goals of the business as well, as opposed to just the role. It's, we've got a sales role, we need to fill it. Well, what's that long-term vision? How are the managers rewarded? Because that's going to flow down from, whatever the issue or the goal is in that business. It's going to flow down from the board, right?
Correct.
So,
and, as I said earlier, I used to recruit finance. So if you could sit in front of a CFO and have read the annual report and really understood the finance components within it, the P&L, the balance sheet, you instantly got credibility. You weren't just in there to ask about the culture or ask about, when are you next hiring? And if you can elevate the conversation to, hey, I've noticed that one of your competitors is actually outperforming you in this area. Why do you think that is? Or how do you plan to counteract that? Again, all of a sudden, the person that you're talking to is thinking, this is a consultant, not just a salesperson.
Spot on, right? And that's the title of what we all are, right? At the heart of it, it's consultants. It's not about being subservient to a client or being transactional. We're consultants. We're here to understand your business from a talent perspective. And I think it's asking those questions, because I think for me, there's nothing more boring at a client meeting than actually taking a job brief. Because regardless of what level you're at, right? And whether it's sales or tech, if you've been doing it for a while, chances are what the type of experience they want, what the salary is going to be, the competitors, the type of person that they want for that job. What we don't know is what are the goals of the business, and that's uncovering those conversations just leads to better outcomes for me.
Absolutely. And that's when you become a trusted partner.
Yeah.
And you're having this repeat business and you're working with clients for several years. And that's when there's a real relationship. And that's what we all want to do, is work with people where, there's a good trust both ways. And that's where the transaction part is removed, and we're actually, helping you on your business journey to find the best talent in the market to achieve those goals that you set out.
That's right. That's when they're calling you and they start asking for advice, or they say, hey, I'm thinking of doing X, Y, Z with the team, or we've got this, I don't know, new divisions opening up. We're thinking of structuring it this way or that way. What are your thoughts?
Yep.
I'm thinking of doing this. And that just shows the trust, right?
Exactly. Some of the best client meetings I've been in is where the client says, we're looking for X, and you get into the brief and you really understand the business goals, and you start to work out that initial concept that we thought we were looking to hire for has changed through this conversation. And we're starting to restructure that role to be something slightly different to allow the client to achieve some of the goals that they're actually looking for, rather than just being a cookie cutter, here's a job description, go find me that.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, you can elevate it.
Excellent. One thing, just before I go to the next question, you've changed desks a couple of times. Talk us through that, because that's it's not all that common, right? Where, people been in the industry for so long, they've changed desks and continually been successful in different sectors. How did you go about, learning sales, learning finance, and different sectors when you were given that opportunity?
I think I've always been curious to learn about different markets, and I've seen from finance and sales now, and I've done HR at different times, I've done legal at different times. The fundamentals are the same. If you can really ask highly intelligent questions and you're really curious to learn about the client and the role and the impact that role can have across the business, then you're gathering the right information that should allow you to then go find the right person. So I think that asking the right questions is absolutely critical. Mm-hmm. The second part of that is you have to listen. Two big learns for me early on in my career is I was not as strong at asking good questions, and I really didn't take on the information very well. So there are two things that I keep trying to work on, and that I've found as I have moved desks, really, really valuable to allow me to understand the brief, to understand the client, and to be able to take that information and put that into a search to make sure that we find the right talent. A lot of it comes back to the questions and how well you take on that commercial information. Yeah,
excellent. And talk to us about that, specifically the art of listening, because I know that's something when we prepared for this, you talked a lot about. What does that mean to you? What advice would you have for any recruiters, right, at any level around listening?
I think it's listening to learn rather than just asking a question then just moving straight on. So, the idea of having a really open question and then diving deeper into having secondary and third questions off the back of that is really, really valuable. So that you can then really understand what the client means. Because initially they might say, we want a sales manager. But once you actually dig deeper on that point, you might work out, well, it's not necessarily a sales manager. It might be a business development lead. So it's really listening to learn and seeking to understand, I think, is the key part. To that listening. And I think that helps build the trust as well over time.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing is, I think in our industry, it's how we engage with clients, right? There's obviously contingent, retained, maybe a mix. What are your thoughts on all of it? Because I think some people, like I know you do a lot of retained work. Some people may be hesitant to pitch that. Sometimes maybe it's not right. What's your thoughts on how we engage with clients?
My thoughts are our best level of service to a client is when we're retained, and that allows us to really take the time and the energy to find the best talent available. And that, when I say available, that could be people that aren't actively looking, they're passive candidates, but we need to take the time to headhunt those. And a retained basis means that we can spend the time and invest that energy up front for the customer. And so the quality of service that they get, the quality of the outcome that they get is far greater for them in the business in the medium to long term. So I'm a big believer in working on a retained partnership with customers. Nearly all the work that I do would be on that basis. And I really encourage even our junior consultants to be doing the same thing because it's the best outcome for the client. When it becomes a race and it's competitive with multiple agencies, it becomes a lot more about luck.
100%. You need, to a degree, you need the stars to align, right? One, if you've got 3-4 recruiters, you got to hope you find that right candidate first before the other recruiters do. There's no other better candidates that they've provided. You've got them there first, and almost like the planets have to align for you to make a placement.
Yeah, and that, I don't think that's a good hiring strategy. No. If you're leaving it down to luck or chance, that to me lacks real thought as a hiring approach. I wouldn't want to hire people just based on luck. I'd want it to be systematic. I want it there to be a really thorough process that I know that we've gone through to hire for our own business, rather than, we just got a lucky CV.
Yeah.
So I understand that when you're building your personal brand in the market to begin with, you do need at times to win those contingent roles or competitive briefs, because then that option of working with the client opens up for a second time. And I think you can still achieve that if you really know your market, you're in a niche, you can turn things around quite quickly when you're early on in your career. I think that's really important, that you're not closed out to working on those contingent or competitive jobs. I think we always need to do that as well.
Yeah, I agree as well. That's where you get a lot of the heartbreak, right? You do all the things right, and then, I don't know, another recruiter sent someone yesterday when your candidate had a third interview, and if they're the better candidate, they're going to get the job, right? And you've put in 6 weeks of work, you've got nothing to show for it at the end of the day, right? And as much as, bad luck, mate, it's not going to pay the bills. So I agree with you 100%. I think, it takes time, I think, for people to have that confidence. And I think sometimes, speaking with, I guess part of my job, I get to speak to a lot of recruiters every day, and a lot of the more junior recruiters, there's just a hesitation for them to pitch. And I think it comes down to the pressure, because there is pressure when you pitch retain, the client's paid, a portion up front. They feel that pressure. I've got to deliver now. What advice would you have for, those recruiters who are, at that stage where they've got the confidence to do it, but they're still not 100% invested into it?
I think you've got to, firstly, if you don't try it, you're never going to develop or hone the skill of actually pitching a retainer. And I think you will actually enjoy your job far more when you've got commitment from a client, your job becomes far more enjoyable. You can actually start to forecast to your manager. I've got these 2 or 3 retainers on. I'm investing this amount of time. And then it really becomes back to your process, Chris. I think if a client's committed to you and they've said, right, here's a commencement fee, then it's just how good's my process? How am I going to develop a long list of candidates? How well am I going to interview or screen those candidates? How's my behavioural-based interviewing techniques? How's my technical interviewing techniques? And how are you assessing those candidates? That's where the hard work goes in. But if you've got a good process and system to work through methodically, then I think you will achieve the great outcome for the client.
Yeah, and it's just taking that leap of faith, right? And I think just doing it at the end of the day, right?
You've got to have a crack.
100% have a crack. You're going to fail a few times, like in terms of your pitch and whatnot. But I think that's a difference coming back to, those people who are fortunate enough to have, or to work in a business where there are leaders who are, obviously a lot more experienced than them and better at what they do, who will go out to those meetings with them, who will be hands-on, and they'll be able to see, oh, well, that's how Sam pitches it, and that's how John pitches it, and that's how Mary pitches it. Well, I can add my little personal flair to it, and eventually, you've got your, I guess, the confidence to do it at the end of the day.
Yeah, you've got to believe it. And I think seeing other people do it will help with that. But believing that this is the best approach for the client is what really needs to anchor the mindset.
Yeah.
It's not about what's good for you. It's this adds a lot of benefit to my client at the end of the day. If I'm going to invest 35, 40 hours into finding the best talent, that's only good for them.
100%.
And I think you've got to believe that.
Yeah.
To then start pitching it and start, saying it with conviction.
But also the candidate experience as well. Not forgetting about that. How much, just from a, if you just put your selfish hat on and say, hey, I'm just looking at it pure from a commercial point of view, how much control that gives you over a candidate, where you can say, hey, mate, first interviews are on the 1st of, October, second interview is happening on the, 5th, and offer will be given on the 7th, whatever it may be, right? That gives you that time to, one, inform the candidates, but two, just gives you that control, towards to an outcome, and ultimately a better experience for the candidate, which just helps your brand in market, whether they've gotten that job or not. At least they can say, hey, you know what, I didn't get it, but their process was awesome.
Yeah. And if that candidate ever becomes a hiring manager, or perhaps they are a hiring manager, they think, well, I had a really good experience with Chris. I'm going to go back to next time I hire, I'm going to call Chris.
Yeah.
And so it just allows you to deliver a much better quality of work all around, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, obviously a lot of changes within our industry over the last sort of few years. Obviously, we had that post-pandemic boom like we've never seen before, and then, a crash, and now it's sort of, I guess you can call it a normal market. What do you see out there? What do you see as the future of the industry? Where's the industry sort of heading over the next couple of years?
I think the industry will continue to evolve. I think we've seen the slowdown in the market over the last 2 years really requires people that are prepared to go out and win new work and really chase the opportunity rather than the opportunity come inbound. So that's probably the first thing. The market today, there is still really, really great opportunities for people out there. But you do need to be proactive. You do need to be prepared to be scrappy. You do need to be prepared to be in the traffic. I think if you're stuck in an office too much, you're probably not going to get to enough opportunities. I think the advancement of AI and technology is really going to help our industry or help the consultants that want to be meeting people and having conversations.
Yeah.
Because we should get to a point where all of our job briefs are all done through, as in the note-taking, are all done through AI. We should be able to write advertisements through AI. And that should give us time back. And so that time back is really where we will lean into meeting more clients, meeting more candidates, having more interactions in the market, which is what I really look forward to.
Yeah, it's a human side of our business, right?
Yeah,
So,
if I don't have to do admin.
yeah, you don't have to sit in a spreadsheet
great.
or, look at financials. You'd rather be out meeting people. I think that's where, it's where you make your money and earn your living at the end of the day.
That's it. That's why we came into recruitment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we enjoy being with people, and we get energy from people. So I really think that will give us some time back and allow us to invest more time out in market. I think there's still a lot of cost pressure going on in our industry. The cost of doing business in Australia is high. Clients are wanting more and more, but not wanting to pay as much. So we've got to work through those challenges.
Yep.
And our model at Page Group for a long time has been to invest in graduate recruitment and grow people organically. I still think there is that opportunity, and we'll keep leaning into that because we believe that homegrown talent is a great way to build your culture. It's a great way to build long-term success within your business. And we've seen that this year with a lot of promotions across Page Group in Victoria. The teamwork that comes out of that is really strong. So, and one of the interesting facts out of our business this year is that 38% of our revenue has all come through teamwork of leads and referrals and cross-revenue opportunities. So I think having that homegrown talent that really care and have grown up through the business together means that they're really out there looking after each other. For new people coming into the recruitment for the first time, you can say, well, nearly 40% of your revenue will be generated by the people around you all through the brand. Is a pretty powerful statement, I think. 100%. So we'll keep leaning into that.
Yeah, excellent. And I think what you're doing is great because, from a Rec2Rec perspective, there is a gap in the market, right? At that sort of junior end, I think a lot of people came into the industry post-COVID, left, and, there's a lot of experienced recruiters who are, 7, 8, 10, 15 years. A lot of recruiters maybe that sort of 5 or 6, but then maybe a gap, and a pretty big gap, for recruiters coming in and call it, I don't know, it's almost like refreshing a footy list, right?
Yes.
Refreshing the industry, right, and getting more talent into our industry. That's just going to, help us across the board. But talk to us about Page Group. What are you guys doing at the moment? Give us a bit of an insight into Page.
Yeah, Page Group is continues to evolve as a business. We continue to change. We're never standing still. We've got our 2 core brands that we're focusing on, which is our Page Executive brand and our Michael Page brand. The concept of that is to track people over their evolution of their career from maybe a junior candidate right through into management roles or senior management. And then when they flip into an executive role, we've already been working with that person for years. It's a different type of process. Page Executive does search recruitment, where Michael Page does far more of our middle management, leadership type roles. But the business is going well. The demographic of our organisation has changed. We've got more females in our business than males in Victoria today. We've got a big emphasis on ensuring that we're delivering for our customers. So we recently had some feedback that 98% of our customers want to work with us again, and our net promoter score is at 78, which is really high. So, some of the feedback that we're getting from our customers in a tough market is really positive. We're still driving ahead to keep improving our business and keep refining our skills.
Excellent. Now, I think what you guys are doing in market is great, especially in terms of your grad programs and bringing and growing your own talent. I think that's just not many people do that these days, right? They don't make that investment because it is not just from a cost perspective, right? In terms of there's a time perspective as well from the senior managers and the people who are going to be involved in developing and training these new consultants. It takes time and effort, right? And not many people are doing that. And I think that's great that you're getting more talent, and growing it organically because it's rare, and they're going to buy into the way you guys work, and it's just going to lead to long-term success, I think, for those desks. And
it brings a lot of energy into the office 100%. As well, which I love. Yeah. You get the great energy, which is terrific. And look, we're also hiring strategically from people, experienced recruiters. So we're bringing people in from boutiques all the time, and which you often help us with. And it's really interesting when they land in our business, they have a very different perception of what Page Group is. They think it's this, male-dominated KPI house. And I think when people actually land in the organisation, they realise it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll admit, I thought, probably it was 2 years ago, I reckon, when I first met actually Lucy, your wife in the internal talent team, and going into that meeting and obviously being in the industry for sort of 15, 16 years, I had a perception of Paige. And I walked out of that meeting and I said to Lee, fuck man, that's completely different to what I thought it would be. He's like, yeah, 100% it is. And look, since then, we've had a few successful sort of placements, and I agree with you. It's a very different perception to reality.
Yeah, we're not all wearing suits and ties anymore.
No, go to those things.
I'm sure people still think we are at Page. No, our business, like many, has evolved. Absolutely, we still help people with understanding what good looks like and how we can help them get to that point. But we're a business that is very caring. It's very supportive, and our culture and our tenure is really showing that, which is terrific.
Excellent. Well, Sam, thank you for coming on today. But before I do let you go, one final question. If you could go back to your younger self when you first got into recruitment, what are 1-2 pieces of advice you'd give to yourself?
Geez, my younger self.
It's gone back a while, right? I know. It's the same age, so
I think I would have benefited from having really good processes when I was younger, and knowing what I was going to do every week and putting in those reps, believing that over time they'll pay off, because they do. And you don't necessarily see that early on in your career. You think, geez, I'm putting in all these reps, I'm putting in all this time and effort. Where the fuck are the rewards? And I think at moments that made me go up and down. I think just if I could have been a bit more consistent in believing to stick with the process, that would have been really useful.
Excellent. Well, Sam, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks, Chris.
I'm sure our listeners got a lot of value out of it. And thank you again.
No problems. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Special Sauce. We hope that you're walking away with some insights that you can actually use every day on your desk. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow, like, subscribe, or leave a review so we can reach more recruiters just like you. For more about Sorciety, check out our website on society.com or follow us on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on The Special Sauce.